Hello, I'm Dave Conroy, a security consultant with Bouncertraining in Ireland. Welcome to our Bouncer Awareness course, Level 1. Today we are covering the subject of inductions. For me, this is a very important part of our training because the role of a bouncer is to make sure that everybody enjoys their night in a safe and responsible manner. But your safety should be your first concern. It's very important that you value yourself and value yourself to the extent that you make sure that there's a safe system in work, a system of work put in place that reduces risks to your safety, what can be deemed, what you would consider and your employer would consider acceptable risk. So in order to put in place this system of work, we start with an induction which addresses all safety issues, and not only regarding your safety but the safety of the patrons and the establishment as well. So we will now look at what's involved in an induction. It is your employer really, as when providing a safe system of work, an induction should be standard. And not only when you start with your employer, but say if you do 3 months in this establishment and then move to this establishment, you should get a new induction for every establishment you go to, because every venue has different risks, different setups, so it requires a separate induction for every venue that you would start in. I would suggest, if you don't get provided with an induction, to do your own. Take out your little black book and follow the following procedure. First of all, I recommend that you introduce yourself. When you go to any new venue, introduce yourself first to the head doorman and then to the manager. State that you're there to start and establish exactly what your job description is. Ask him, what am I supposed to do and how do you want me to do it? Ask them find out first of all what's their policies and what's their procedures. What's their policies, for example, on who they want in and who they don't want in. What sort of a crowd do they want? Like, you know what I mean? Security plays a huge part in creating the environment conducive to what the manager or the owner of the establishment wants. The security and the DJ, the bar staff, they play a very important part in creating this environment, one where everybody enjoys their night, one that everybody feels safe, one that everybody feels valued. And that's really, really important for business. You can understand the massive impact this would have on business, and this is what brings people back, feeling valued and feeling safe and enjoying their night. So you should ask what's their policies and what's their procedures. Their policies, for example, would be how much is to be tolerated, under what circumstances. What's the management have the right to take back the right for anybody to stay on the premises. So under what circumstances do you remove this right? Like, so there should be, if they're abusing the staff, what is their policy? What is the policy? At what point do you ask this person to leave? That should be covered by policies. Drinks on the floor. Is there drinks allowed on the floor? There should be a policy on this. There should be a policy on how you refuse people. There should be a policy and a procedure for every aspect of the job. And this is what you should, first of all, establish. The first thing when you go into the work in an establishment, what do you want me to do and how do you want me to do it? A safety plan. This is very, very, very important in any industry, and I feel that there needs to be more attention paid to this in the security industry. A safety plan. So when you see the safety plan, it will cover all sorts of things, every aspect of safety involved in running this establishment. The amount of bouncers is on as a ratio to patrons, everything else. But what you should concern yourself with is who's doing the first aid. If not you, who? Because in a medical emergency, the first person that people are going to look to is you. So I think every bouncer, if your job is looking after the people, I think every bouncer should be trained in first aid. But if it's not you, the least you can do is find out who is doing the first aid. So in a medical emergency, you know exactly where to go and who to look for. Where are the fire exits? I've seen a lot of lads over the years, they rock up to the door and they'll stand in beside you and they'll chat away and everything else, but they won't ask where are the toilets, where are the fire extinguishers. This is where it might seem obvious. There's a lot of lads don't even do this. You have to first of all establish where are the fire exits, walk the routes. Where's the firefighting equipment? Check it. Is it in date? Don't assume that's already checked and that everything's okay. Check the dates on the fire extinguishers. Where are the alarms for the fire? What is the procedure in the event of a fire? Again, this is going to be your responsibility in the event of an emergency. Now, I have brought this up several times. 25 years I'm doing doors, and never once have I been given an evacuation procedure in the event of a bomb scare or a fire. Now, I think it's sort of obvious who's responsible and who has to take control in the event of a bomb scare, in the event of a fire. You have two different scenarios. Number one, when the fire alarm goes off, nobody's going to move. Everybody stands there and they'll drink and they're in whatever altered state they're in. But they're not a lot of time they won't be too arsed until they see apparent danger. They'll see smoke coming through a door or they'll see a glimpse of fire, and now what have we? We've panic. So that's two different scenarios that have to be dealt with. And the best way to do this is to preempt it and put in place a procedure and drill it. Even in primary school in 5th and 6th class, we used to drill the fire drill. You should drill it, but you should have a procedure in place for evacuation. And that's your responsibility. Now, we're on now to risk assessment. Now, this is the thing that I have a big issue with, because I'm really wondering who is doing the risk assessments in this industry, because a lot of them, I think, have to be called into question. They really do. In a lot of places, you're not even seeing, but you're entitled to see a risk assessment. And the first thing you should do, and when you go into a place, is ask for the safety plan and ask for the risk assessment. There's supposed to be one by law, there's supposed to be one, and you're supposed to see it. So you're aware of the risks to your safety, and you know what mitigating strategies have been put in place to address them. But in the event that there isn't a risk assessment, do your own. Identify what risks are there to my safety and what mitigating strategies can be put in place to address them. And that's for every eventuality. Bottling glass incidents, for example. There should be a procedure for this, and you should have. Our training is done through scenario and role play. So what we do is we create a scenario, because by using scenario and role play, the same instincts fire. If it's done right, you can learn how you react, and you can have your thinking done. So in a situation, it becomes, you already have a procedure, you know what you're doing. You don't have to work it out in real time, if you know what I mean. So you should identify the risks to your safety and put in place mitigating strategies to address them. And that includes training, policies, and procedures. That's the best way to deal with risk. Training, policies and procedures. And it's in your interest and in the interest of the company you work for, because it reduces liability and reduces incidents in the first place. Camera awareness. This is a little bit old school, because in my training it comes from all my time doing doors. I always suggest to everybody, when you go to a new venue, go to the control room, look at what the cameras, where they are and what they see. I believe it's very important, not that you want to be doing anything that you shouldn't be doing, but if you're aware of what the camera sees, you can play to this, if you know what I mean. Once you know what the camera sees, and a further point in our training when we're doing the role-playing scenario, I will explain more about this. But when it comes to camera awareness, in the current era, in modern society, you have to remember that everybody has one in their pocket. Everybody has one in their pocket, and it's coming out in a heartbeat. So it's very, very important to train and work in a professional manner, because you'll be tried across social media before it ever even goes to court. And being tried across social media, let me tell you, has a big impact, because people want to be seen to respond. In other words, you're getting the boo. If it goes across social media, something goes wrong and you're not working in a professional manner, you're in trouble. And it's not worth it. So for instance, be seen to work that's why if you want to restrain someone or you have to restrain them for any reason, use voice commands, use verbal commands. And we'll go through all this later in a later stage of the training. But be very aware that the cameras now are everywhere. That's when you first start our whole induction, for when you first start on a premises. But then I would suggest that every night when you go in, there's a little procedures you go through. And one of them would be walk the routes. All the routes. So if there's 3 fire exits, you walk the 3 routes. You make sure all doors are open, there's no obstacles in your path, you've identified the risks. For instance, if there's, I used to work in one nightclub and it was an absolute camel ride out to the back gate. If you went out the back gate, it was a camel ride up 2 or 3 sets of steps, everything else. So you have to identify these problems, you have to identify these risks, and you have to put in place mitigate strategies. For instance, you know then, if I have to remove somebody through this exit, I require 2 people. Because a camel ride is a long way on your own. So at least then you can start putting in place, again, procedures. But once you've identified the routes and walked the routes, making sure that all doors are open, there's no obstacles, identify any risks that could possibly have changed since you were last there, for instance, a week. Check your PPE, check your radios, make sure your earpiece is working, your radio is working. That might sound standard, but that's very, very important. Check your PPE. That covers our induction. I very much encourage, again, I think it's very important in this industry, what I want to bring to this industry is that you start, first of all, instead of making the people feel valued and safe, that's the first thing, but it must start with you. It must start with you. Your safety comes first. And then, once you have your safety in order and you're making sure that your safety is covered, then you can apply the same principles to everybody else and make sure everybody enjoys their night in a safe and responsible manner. Our next video will be on conflict management. Thank you very much.